Travis, thanks for doing this with me, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Philip. Appreciate you setting this up.
Yeah, for sure. I've known about DriveWorks for a long time, but you kind of became the expert on it a long time ago, and now you're my go-to DriveWorks person at the company, I'd say.
Yeah, no doubt. I've been using it for, man, probably 10 years or so. Um, Got quite a bit of experience with it. It seems to be gaining traction. So, yeah, it's nice to sit down with you guys every once in a while and get to chat about design automation.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm hoping you expose me some more. I'm always impressed when you and maybe Chris, you bring up projects that aren't even related to SolidWorks, and you're like, oh yeah, I have DriveWorks doing this for me in my day-to-day in our regular job, and I have no understanding of that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but at the core foundation of DriveWorks, everybody thinks about automating your SolidWorks designs, but it's got so many more capabilities outside of just SolidWorks that there's some really cool things you can automate, whether it's, integration to other systems or generating Word documents, Excel files. It's a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, maybe we'll get there, but like maybe not today. If we stick on SolidWorks, I've known DriveWorks Express since I've started using SolidWorks as like an add-in I can get to inside of SolidWorks on the Evaluate, tab of the Command Manager, and I feel like it's the only thing there that is not an in-house like owned SolidWorks product. Like it's a third party. These guys are
Yep.
super helpful. These guys out of the UK, but every other thing I see there is like, I wonder how they got embedded into the SolidWorks interface like that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they've been around for a long time. I think 2001 maybe was when DriveWorks kind of came around and DriveWorks Express was introduced. I also feel like it's probably the most useful Express tool. A lot of them, have some capabilities, but they're very limited. Express can do quite a bit when it comes to automating, just simple parts and assemblies. So it's one of those things that I think a lot of people should try to take advantage of because they've already got it. Might as well use it.
Yeah, that's good to know. I do a ton with SolidWorks Flow Sim. The Flow Express doesn't do all that much for you. Like you really need the
No.
full Flow Sim. But yeah, when I show DriveWorks to some folks, I usually use DriveWorks Express because it's already in every seat of SolidWorks, and there's a tutorial for it under the
Yep.
help. It's a pretty nice little gantry. I know it's a I show like, oh, here's how you can build it, and then I think I show the other end of the world because I go to live.driveworks.com and show some things working in the web, which is very high end, I would think.
Yeah, both of those are great resources. I actually have DriveWorks Live
Oh,
pulled
cool.
up here, driveworkslive.com. But yeah, people can always go here and check out a bunch of online examples for various configurators. There's a bunch of industry-specific examples, and if they just hit try example, they get to interact with the DriveWorks project and kind of check out all the ways it can be used. I think that's kind of one of the interesting aspects of it is if you didn't know what you were looking at, you would think each one of these examples was probably just a totally different software, something, custom built for somebody. But the tool is so flexible in what you can build that it really lets you tailor automation to exactly what you need.
Yeah, I think when I look at this one, it's been tough for me, like this website, to connect my mind to this and SolidWorks because, like, the graphics look different, and I just like
Hmm.
it's a stretch. So I'm really like, how is this a SolidWorks project in the background? I actually just worked with some guys who were doing geometry is not unlike that scissor lift, I guess, on the right. It was stuff that
Yep.
I thought, oh, this is very configurable. You have people order it and they go, we need it to fit this size, like a scissor lift, go this high, be this wide, hold this much weight. So it's a very similar product. Like I as a SolidWorks user, I'm like, yeah, I can see how you configure the SolidWorks model for it. Um, yeah, how do you kind of explain DriveWorks to folks if they come from SolidWorks, they're first hearing about it, and they're like, all right, I want to get into automation, but how does it start?
Yeah, I mean, it's always easier when somebody recognizes that they've got a scenario that fits automation really well. Usually that's going to be scenarios where products are engineered to order or configured to order, kind of like that example you were describing, where, overall the product's very similar, but each customer wants their own size, their own shape, their own dimensions. Traditionally that's something that maybe configurations might try to handle in SolidWorks,
Sure.
but it gets very difficult when the number of variables climbs up. You could be talking about thousands or tens of thousands of possible configurations that somebody would have to build in advance.
Mm.
Um, And so usually that's where people start to kind of recognize that they're doing the same process over and over. They're reworking the same models, just making slight changes here and there. And that's a very textbook scenario for us to kind of identify. Um, if we identify that, usually we'll kind of set up a meeting and just chat about, the particular scenario. And then DriveWorks Express is usually a good entry point. Everybody has access to it. You can start to automate portions of your design. And that's always kind of I guess a hurdle a lot of companies have to face is what do we automate first? Where do we start? I usually try to grab the low-hanging fruit, the things that are easy to automate that you have to do every day. They're not difficult for anybody to do, but they're time consuming. Those are things that are usually very easy to automate and everybody can kind of see the immediate benefit. Um,
Okay, so
so
maybe what I'm seeing there then, like when I look at DriveWorks Live, I'm thinking like a salesman or like a business owner, and I'm thinking, oh, my
yep,
customer can touch this thing. But you're saying the starting place might be a SOLIDWORks user, maybe a design, somebody's got a lot in a design table, a ton of configs, and they're thinking like, how can I just save myself some legwork?
absolutely. Yeah, it can
Okay.
definitely vary, but usually that's a common place to start is at the engineering or design level. Um, I think engineers can kind of see the immediate benefit. My kind of go-to phrase is like, I don't know anybody that suffered through 4 years, 5 years of engineering school just to kind of do the same, plug and play dimensions
Yeah,
all
yeah.
over each and every day. So as an engineer, it's nice to free yourself up to do actual engineering work, problem solving, and try to just automate those monotonous tasks. If a company doesn't necessarily have that need on the engineering side, maybe they are more focused about, how do we convey our products to our customers or to our sales guys and make a configurator that's easy to use and easy to understand. Sometimes we'll focus more on the sales side first, but a lot of times it does start down at the engineering or design level.
Okay. Is that the next place? I mean, anybody who knows SolidWorks, let's say well enough to get into configurations and design tables, you could get into Express, use SolidWorks Standard, you could get into DriveWorks Express, and
Yep.
then I'd say that let's say you have that skill set. You can fully define sketches, you can make stuff that change within a range and doesn't get rebuild errors, right?
Yep.
And then you could do all the DriveWorks Express stuff. What's the next level then? It's probably not going straight to this DriveWorks Live.
No, no. Generally, we'll probably jump up to DriveWorks Solo. I think people that start using DriveWorks Express realize the benefit pretty quick, and they're going to jump up to either Solo or Pro, depending on kind of what needs they recognize right off the bat. The nice thing is all of these tools scale up. So even if you start at Express, it's not like you're handicapping yourself and you're going to have to start all over when you jump to Solo or Pro. You can take that Express project, open it up directly in DriveWorks Solo, DriveWorks Pro, and it'll be there just like it was before. So I'll usually have people try to go ahead and use DriveWorks Express. If we hit some limitations or recognize some big benefits, you can actually get a free 30-day trial of DriveWorks Solo. You don't
Wow.
even have to go through a reseller or anything like that. You can request it directly from DriveWorks. And you can take that Express project and kind of test out some more advanced capabilities. And with DriveWorks Solo, usually what that's going to mean is, more robust forms. We may show that here in a minute, but you can start to get a lot more fields that users are able to fill out. You can get pretty images. You can get some kind of dynamic selection that does what we call guided selling. And guided selling is really just making sure that if somebody selects one option, that option could affect a secondary option to limit what a user can choose from, just so they're not making incompatible selections.
Okay, so
We want to actually configure things that we can design and manufacture.
for sure. So when I thought of DriveWorks Express, I thought like, all right, I've seen it personally. So it's the SolidWorks interface, it's the task pane. I end up with a form that the end user is still me that I fill out and I go, hey, build me one this tall, this wide, go,
Yep.
and then it automates it. When you get to Solo, one is the interface different? Are you still on SolidWorks? And then two, is the most common end user still the same SolidWorks user?
It is, yeah, yeah. So what Philip's kind of referring to, I do have DriveWorks Pro loaded up right now, but this interface over here on the side, this is where you would typically interact with DriveWorks Express or DriveWorks Solo. So both of those products require the user to have a SolidWorks installation because that's where it's going to be run.
For sure.
So you're still primarily focused at the engineering level with those products. If you want to start to make that tool available to salespeople or to customers, that's where we jump up to DriveWorks Pro. It can start to run and present the interface outside of SolidWorks, either through an
Ah.
application that you run on your desktop or even through like a web browser.
So Solo's going to use this interface here, but just with more bells and whistles than
Yep,
Express.
exactly.
Okay. And then Pro is where you first get a new interface.
Yeah, so with Pro, you'll start to get standalone applications. So this is DriveWorks Pro Administrator. This is kind of the
Okay.
brains of the operation. And similar to this, you could have a what's called a DriveWorks user license, and that might be an interface that your sales guy pulls up on his machine to just kind of run the project and maybe create a new order. Um, and then same thing with DriveWorks Live. If anybody's going to the DriveWorks Live website, you're looking at DriveWorks Pro running inside of a browser. Uh,
Ah.
Access it anywhere.
So you're gonna have DriveWorks Pro. You're gonna have that bigger console you just showed, that program. And then if you had, um, gosh, what was the license you said a salesman might use?
A user license
User license. Are
would
you?
be one option. Yep.
Would you always have Pro? You'd be, I have DriveWorks Pro, and I need a user license for this guy.
Yeah, that's typically going to be a common scenario for salespeople. Now, some
Okay.
customers do just decide if they're going to have it up on their website anyways, and they're going to be using live licenses to make it available in the browser, they'll have their salespeople use it in the same manner. So
Yeah,
they
that
might
makes
have an
sense.
internally facing website that the sales guys use.
So if you're getting into user or live license like this, you're already a DriveWorks Pro
Yep,
customer? Okay, I
you
got it.
got it.
Express, Solo, Pro, and you can get
Yep.
in you can get an Express and Solo for free. I
Yeah,
take it.
yeah, you can get that 30-day solo trial to play around and make sure you explore all the capabilities and kind of prove the ROI and go from there.
So I got a scenario, like a customer example that I was working with, folks that had brought some guys in, they were new to SolidWorks. The owner has seen DriveWorks live. It's like, I see the vision of this for my company. So we want to get all the folks there. So in the beginning, what we did is we took some guys who were new, they're AutoCAD users. We took them through SolidWorks Essentials training, and then we did, I think, some sheet metal and weldments training. Then we went out and we did a couple of their projects with them, um, to make sure that basically everything had was configured correctly, that we wouldn't get rebuild errors if we go, hey, let's make a pat and go this project, create a new configuration, let's change all these values for customer inputs, nothing breaks. At that point, I feel like they're actually pretty ready now to move into DriveWorks. Um, what do you do when you take them from there? Do you do a training class?
Yeah, absolutely. So your thought process right there is 100% on board. Your models have to be pretty sound before you want to move forward with DriveWorks. DriveWorks can't, break the laws of physics. So if you're trying to change dimensions and things like that in your models, you need to make sure that you can do it manually without breaking things. From there, yeah, it really kind of depends. Every customer is going to be a little bit different, but for DriveWorks Pro especially, we always try to offer a little bit of training. Typically, that's going to be our 2-day DriveWorks admin course where we just kind of run you through the fundamentals. Um, we'll get you used to the interface. We'll get you used to kind of the project structure. We'll show you how to capture those different parameters within your models that you want to be able to modify and change dimensions on. And then we'll also just run through kind of all the rule functionality, which, I think is kind of a big selling point for DriveWorks. You don't have to be a programmer. I tell this to everybody. I'm not a programmer. I took a programming class in college, barely passed it. you know, you, but the syntax for writing rules in DriveWorks is pretty easy. It's very similar to Excel, so it's not a huge learning curve. And we'll just kind of show you the basics, and from there, some customers are able to run with it and do some really cool things on their own. For other customers that maybe want to shorten that ramp up time, we'll do a little bit of consulting afterwards, just kind of check in every once in a while, help them get over a few hurdles here and there, and we're off to the races. But DriveWorks does have some really good resources on their website as well for kind of learning, specific pieces of the technology that you may want to implement.
Okay, so you just the regular type of software implementation, I'd imagine. It's kind of install, train, maybe a little configuration, and then have you done projects with this too, where folks say, "Hey, can you just do our first one with us?"
We definitely do. We'll do turnkey projects. I'll say that it's not always our preferred method, and that's not because we don't want to do it, just because we feel like it's a little bit more successful when the customer owns the project themselves. Um, Anytime that you've got, a tool that's automating your design process or even is a key portion of your sales process, it's something that needs to stay up to date. So you
Mm.
need to have the capability to be able to make changes quickly, um, so that it's always aligned with kind of your company's, focus and future goals. So we prefer for customers to kind of own that if they have the resources to do it. But for customers that say, look, we're slam packed, we're busy, we're happy
You do
to
some of
work with
those.
those customers. Yeah, we'll do some turnkey projects.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think we do that kind of across the board on things. We want people to learn to fish and be successful and grow on their own. See that growth inside. And for me, when I do simulation projects in a very similar way here. There's a lot of assumptions that have to be made, or somebody with a
Hmm.
more of a know, the tribal knowledge, I'd say, of their product and everything that's gone on. It's very helpful to have them right there to make those decisions that, I don't really know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I always say there's kind of no free lunch. We'll do a turnkey project, but it kind of requires that I'm gonna either have to learn your product really well, or somebody's gonna have to be there with me to kind of coach me through the customer's
Yeah.
product and end goal.
Yeah, I will say, I'll bring it back. You mentioned the resources on there. Working with the DriveWorks guys over the year, and this may speak to why they're integrated inside the SOLIDWORKS interface when nobody else is. But every time I've worked with them, it has been seamless. From their support, when we have tech support cases where I need to bring them in, or I've brought them in to do demos where it's like, hey, I don't have the stuff installed and Travis wasn't available. They were always right on time. So I've been really impressed with the DriveWorks company. The guys there, they're always at 3D Experience World. You know, they're in the UK,
Yeah,
but
no,
they're always in Texas. I don't know.
I couldn't agree more. They're such a good company to work with. A little bit of a smaller company, kind of a lot like MLC, I think. And everybody over there is super sharp. They train everybody on DriveWorks. They're always happy to help, and they're excited to see what people do with this technology. They're constantly making improvements to try and make sure that this tool delivers everything that everybody needs. But like you said, they do have a learning portal. I actually have it pulled up here in the background. So once customers purchase, either DriveWorks Pro or DriveWorks Solo, that learning portal, they get access to this. And you can see they've just got tons and tons of courses that you can go
Oh
through.
wow.
So, yeah, there's always the base level of here's what DriveWorks does that everybody kind of needs. And then from there, a lot of companies kind of veer off in different directions. And so there's all sorts of very specific courses and modules that um, you can run through to learn exactly how to implement technology that fits your goal.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So that just comes with it. You don't have to buy into this learning portal.
Nope. It's all included. So you'll get access to kind of whatever version you currently own. So you will see there's some DriveWorks Express stuff, like a new to DriveWorks Express. They've got a lot of stuff on their website as well, that can kind of coach you through it. And then for each of the versions above that, you get access to more and more content, um, which obviously kind of matches. DriveWorks Pro has a lot of things that it can do. So
Yeah.
once you start diving into it, it's nice to have some easy to access resources to learn all those tools.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in the beginning, you guys driving all sorts of things outside of SolidWorks too. And one thing like kind of surprised me when we talked about this, I don't know, a couple months ago, was doing your equation work inside of DriveWorks instead of inside of SolidWorks. So sometimes I think a
Yeah.
barrier for myself is going, well, I need to figure out everything with my global variables and equations and all that in SolidWorks to get my models working fantastic. But you were saying, I guess maybe this is a DriveWorks Pro level. But
Really, at almost all those levels, it's a very common thing we get. Customers will try to automate their design through SOLIDWORKS, like you said, using global variables and equations, and it works well until maybe they hit a limit. SOLIDWORKS doesn't necessarily have as many functions that you can take advantage of. I would say that rule set isn't as robust.
Hmm.
And so usually we'll have customers come to us and they've already got all this stuff inside of their model that's doing the automation. And we'll try to kind of break that out and do it all inside of DriveWorks, mostly because it's a lot easier to manage when all of your logic is in one place. You don't want to have to jump back and forth trying to figure out, okay, is it an equation in SolidWorks that's doing this? Is it in DriveWorks? We try to do it all in DriveWorks. That makes it, A, easier to find, but B, it also gives us the ability to kind of share that logic elsewhere. A big part of trying to make an efficient automation tool is reuse of logic and data. And
Hmm.
so if we've got all that data stored in DriveWorks, DriveWorks can kind of act as a central hub to be able to integrate with other systems or share that information across maybe different model sets. Um, Might get down into the weeds a little bit, but it
Yeah.
definitely makes life a lot easier to have it in one interface where the tool set is really, really good.
I guess I could see that. I mean, I use Excel. Even if I use a design table, I use Excel-based design table personally, because I can do more
Yep.
there. When you say the interface, like the Express and Solo are just the interface in SolidWorks, right? Like you don't get the full interface till you get Pro, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You don't get the full interface like you do here, but those still have kind of a project structure. With Express, it's running on like a Microsoft Access database. So when you
Oh.
create that logic in the project, it's actually storing it more or less outside of the model still.
Hmm.
Same thing with Solo and Pro. That all gets stored kind of in your DriveWorks project away from your
Uh,
SolidWorks model.
I see. So even when you're working just in the task pane on DriveWorks Express, and you're saying this dimension over here, I need to link it, add whatever
Yep,
to it to this dimension, that's not going in the SolidWorks equations. That's going into a
the
database.
database. Yep,
Okay,
you got it.
I get you.
It also makes it really nice too if you're talking about revision management on your models. If you want to make a change to the automation logic, you're not having to physically, pull a file out of a release state and let's say PDM to go make changes to the
Oh.
model. You're just making some quick changes to a database that's going to drive that model later on.
Okay, and let me continue the questioning in that direction, because what I think would be cool is in the future if we could get together again. I mean, I would love to see like the linking, like go to a model and like see, oh, this is connected to that, this is connected to that, this is how it all works up to the front end that looks so beautiful on live, But I'll definitely be driving you in the weeds on that. The PDM side of it, is there any?
hmm
I mean, I was just thinking, oh, it makes files. It's one of the only tools that automates and makes files. And I would imagine it just puts it into PDM and you check them in. Is there anything else to
Yeah,
consider?
yeah. I mean, DriveWorks Pro is the version that has an actual integration with PDM Pro.
Okay.
Because both of those tools are open API, there's a plugin that allows you to hook directly into your vault. You can give your DriveWorks Pro project essentially a user login to PDM, and that'll
Oh.
let it go perform actions. So it can check in, it can check out, it can get latest. It can interact with PDM kind of like a user would. With DriveWorks Express and DriveWorks Solo, there's no integration to PDM, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't still incorporate both tools into your design process. There'll just be some more manual processes like either, copying the files over to your vault or just doing a check-in after maybe DriveWorks Solo has placed them into your local vault
Yeah,
view.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
The other one's
yeah,
more
but with
interesting. So with Pro, you actually make DriveWorks itself a PDM user.
yeah, up here in the settings, there's actually a DriveWorks Pro plugin. Comes already loaded as soon as you install it. All you have to do is enable it and go to settings, and then you'll just tell it, here's the name of my vault, here's a username, here's a password, here's kind of some things that I'd like you to do to manage models or projects, and then it can kind of offload that and be as hands off as possible. And that's typically the idea. When you start to scale up with DriveWorks and let's say make it available on a website for your customers, you want that customer to get feedback and results basically instantly, and you want all that data to be loaded in your system as well. So we try to eliminate, manual processes anywhere in that chain of actions. So if the customer can go request something on our website and it generates models and it checks them into the vault and emails the customer a copy. We want all that to happen without somebody having to babysit it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I guess this way it can get whatever information it needs from the database. Like the live examples, I know you'll see like an estimated cost updating as you're making changes there. It's like, yeah, it
Yep.
would have to retrieve that information, which is like custom properties on a SOLIDWORKS file or attributes. This material costs this much.
Yeah, it could be something that it's pulling from the SolidWorks model itself, or the big thing that DriveWorks does well, and everybody seems to be focusing on is integration. So when you get up to DriveWorks Pro, you do have the ability to push and pull directly from a third-party database. Could be a SQL database that maybe your ERP system runs on, or any other business level software package, but we can actually go retrieve real-time pricing, calculate costs, things like that from other software systems.
Wow. All right, let me ask you about one that I'm getting asked about all the time now, and I don't know if the question's annoying me or prodding me to think about stuff. Is AI? You know, and that's I think when most people talk to me now about automation, it like comes up with AI, and I know that SolidWorks is they're starting to put in little tricks of AI and like newest releases. They've got the Aura AI thing coming out. Do you get those conversations with DriveWorks?
I've definitely had that come up in some past conversations. It's not something I've had a chance to chat with the DriveWorks guys about it in a while, but I feel like that's something that they're looking into. The nice thing is because, like we said, DriveWorks Pro's open API. It can communicate with just about any tool out there. So if you've got a tool that um, is like a large language model or AI, and it's able to spit out some data that you want to consume. I would certainly think that it's possible to either build your own kind of hook into one of those systems, or I will not be surprised if DriveWorks has one sometime in the near future.
Yeah, well,
You might be able to.
we'll see what comes from it. I'm just starting with my own little AI projects, and I feel like most of them get me, I don't know, 80% of where I want it to go, but they're not the best at being, I don't know, super detail oriented or good, like good with math, right?
Yeah,
So I don't know
yeah,
how.
I do. I actually use AI quite a bit for DriveWorks projects. It's not something that, is necessarily being used while the user's interacting with it, but just building them up. I've just found it, really, really handy to be able to maybe write SQL queries or dive into topics that you're maybe not as familiar with. Um,
Yeah,
I think it's really, really good at that sort of stuff.
yeah, yeah. It's been handy for me as well on a lot of cloud data management stuff recently. Um, for the same reason, just almost like building my own Google search engine when I can control sources to it.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, anyways, man, I don't want to take up much more of your day, but I do want to see if maybe if there's something else you wanted to add while we're here. You know, I've been driving things, but also if we could, get together down the road and maybe look at a project more in depth from like all the way down to some sketches in SOLIDWORKS to like all the way to the front end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could show you maybe an example project real quick just to kind of show, what it looks like to actually run DriveWorks and kind of a model that might be automated
Yeah, if you
inside of SolidWorks.
if it would think it wouldn't take up too much of your time, man, I'd definitely like to see it. Let me I'll pull
Yeah,
your
yeah,
window
I've got
back up
one.
here. Cool.
Sure. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, man, I've seen your SolidWorks.
Cool. Yeah, this is just a demo that DriveWorks has, and you can even find this one on DriveWorksLive.com. But this is just kind of a little semi-trailer assembly here. Not crazy complex, but we're talking about 500 or 600 models at least.
Hmm.
And you can see inside of SolidWorks, if you wanted to sell this trailer with different lengths, heights, maybe different doors on the back here for different industries. Um, there's a lot of things that you might have to try and automate, and it's not necessarily difficult, but when you've got hundreds of models, you can kind of imagine how long it might take for somebody to open up each one and make all those changes. But with DriveWorks, we can kind of capture all that information and we can automate this fairly easily. So
Hmm.
over here in DriveWorks Administrator, I'm just going to run this project to kind of show you what it looks like. And when it starts up, what it gives me is kind of an initial splash screen that says, what type of trailer are you wanting to configure? Just kind of four generic options that help steer whoever's using this in the right direction. I'm going to do a rigid box trailer here, but you'll notice that a lot of this is, I would say it's very workflow oriented. We're not showing every possible option all at once because I think that gets very confusing when you're trying to convey your, you know, quite technical product to a customer that may not have a full understanding about every last detail. So we'll
Sure.
show somebody a little bit at a time, enough that it's easy to understand, and we'll give them some context to see what those changes involve. So once we've picked out kind of the type of trailer we want, now we can choose maybe the height and the length. And with DriveWorks Pro, you get some really advanced form technology. So you can see how I can actually manipulate a 3D model in real time. I can see those changes. And as I'm choosing some of these, you'll actually notice this price down here on the bottom right that's also updating. So it could be doing, real-time calculations from an ERP system. It could just be calculating, cost based on, length and width of, let's say, one of these panels and a given material cost per square foot.
Hmm.
There's a lot of cool things you can do, but DriveWorks can do a full CPQ configure price quote type scenario to deliver a lot on the output side. So as we hit next, it'll just kind of jump us through some different selections. We can choose, different wheel types. We want aluminum, if we want steel.
It's interesting. Are these
On the
just
back, we
like 3D models that have been output from SolidWorks? Like, when it changes
it,
length.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So they are, I'll say, almost all built off of SolidWorks models. What we do is we export them to a different file format called Drive 3D. It's kind of a DriveWorks 3D specific file format that's a little bit lighter weight. So it doesn't matter what type
Ah,
of hardware you're running it on, if it's in a browser, if it's on a tablet, it all performs really well. And then, yeah, we just kind of write rules, very similar to how we do with our SolidWorks models to determine how those files are going to swap in and out or change size based on the user selection.
gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Good example here on the back door. So we can choose from a hinge door or roller shutter. And back in the SolidWorks model, you'll notice the base level assembly actually has a hinge door here.
Yeah.
And the roller door doesn't even exist in the SolidWorks model. So what's cool about DriveWorks is it can actually dynamically change and swap out models on the fly. So even though this roller door doesn't exist in the model, it's going to go find it. It's going to drive it to the appropriate size based on kind of the height of the trailer we've configured, and then it's going to swap it um, into that top level assembly to replace the original door set.
Wow, so
So if you think,
yeah, I don't even like, follow it all. Like it's got to do a replace component, and then it has to find the faces for mates and stuff.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's some different strategies for how you ensure that those mates replace. If you think about doing this just in SolidWorks manually and you do a replace component, um, you might expect that if you weren't careful about how you built those, it could break some of the mates or would require manual user selection to get everything made in
For
place.
sure.
Um, with DriveWorks, some of that still applies, but there's also a different additional features that we can use to kind of manually handle some of those scenarios to ensure that everything aligns and mates as expected.
Hmm. Cool.
But yeah, it's doing a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes things that look simple on the interface side, there's a lot that goes into the background to kind of automate that. All right, so we'll just kind of run through a couple more selections for landing gear, tail lights. The thing I love about this project, it doesn't matter how much you know about this industry. I could sit my grandmother down in front of this, and I think she would kind of understand
Yeah,
all the steps that
yeah.
we're going through here and what's being affected. Um, so we'll get through a couple of these. We'll pick our overall color. And then what I get here is just kind of a breakdown. And each project can be tailored individually to what a company, really wants to convey. But this one, because we're doing all this pricing, we're going to show a little price breakdown of here's what you've selected, here's what, each option is going to cost you, just kind of giving a little bit more to the user on the decision-making side. And then we've got some kind of made up company names just because this is the demo, but you can see here when we go pick a company name like the Boston Bulls, it actually filters out the contact list as well. And
Sure.
so this is kind of an example of that guided selling, if you will.
Hmm.
What we selected up here is affecting the next set of selections that we have access to. So we can make sure that everything kind of lines up and all of our selections are exactly what we wanted.
Dude, that's really slick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then
Cover letters.
like I said, I won't go too far into the weeds here, but even before we've generated these SolidWorks models, because this trailer doesn't exist yet, we actually have some documentation that's been generated. So we've got an HTML bomb here. So because we know what's going to be required based on all the user selections, we've got a bill of materials with part numbers and quantities and descriptions. So if we need to use that data to go do inventory checks or calculate lead times, all of that stuff's ready to go. We've got a cover letter that we can have
Yeah.
automatically sent to the customer. So it's basically an email template that gets populated and filled out with the company name, the date, all that fun stuff, and we'll actually attach this quote to it as well. So we can generate a quote document, have that automatically emailed out to the customer with maybe like an e-drawings file or just a top level drawing to give them some information about what they're going to order.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's automated, like preliminary quote. I imagine you might still take a look at this before ordering up, I don't know, $65,000 of materials.
Exactly. Even if it's just, trying to get the customer a ballpark price, we always want to try and strike while the iron's hot, so to speak.
Yeah.
If somebody's showing interest in your product, if you can shorten that lead time down, it helps a lot. Usually with those custom products, that's a big challenge because oftentimes you'll see companies doing this manually and it involves a lot of engineering time. It's like, hey, let's go chat with the engineers, figure out what this is going to take to actually produce this specific trailer that we've never done before.
Hmm.
Um, and that can, lengthen the lead time. It can, you know, increase the cost. Engineers, we like to get paid. So if you're going to involve us, it's probably going to cost a little bit more. So if we can make the whole process for producing and selling custom products a little bit easier, that goes a long ways towards selling those products.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, I see this like the truck makes sense, very configurable products, like I mentioned earlier, a catwalk or something.
Yep.
But now as we look at it more, I think like, I mean, everybody who's using SolidWorks is making new stuff, or pretty much every business is going to be making a product and then similar variations of the product. It seems like it has pretty wide application. Um,
It does. Yep.
yeah,
I've even seen customers use DriveWorks that don't own SolidWorks,
really.
believe it or not. Yeah, yeah, they were using it more as a rules engine, which is kind of the way that I think people are starting to think about DriveWorks, or the way they should think about it. It's not just a tool for automating SolidWorks, it is a rules engine, right? You can build in logic, you can manipulate data, you can pull and integrate with other systems, and what you do with that data may just depend on each company's overall goals, whether that's driving SolidWorks models, generating documentation like we see here, or just making an interface on your website where somebody can, easily configure and get more information about your product.
Hmm,
There's a lot of kind of outside the box opportunities or ways that DriveWorks can be utilized.
cool. Well, shoot, maybe we'll need to look at some of those down the road. I mean, I'm still, personally love to see the clicks all the way down to the SolidWorks level, but as I said in the beginning, like those are the ones I don't have my head wrapped around at all. The, driving things other than SolidWorks.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's probably my favorite part about DriveWorks is seeing some of the out of the box ways that people utilize it. So, yeah, maybe on another session we can round up some kind of oddball use cases and talk about those a little bit.
Man, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Well, hey man, I'll let you get back to it. But I appreciate you carving out some time for me on this, and yeah, I look forward to using it a bit, get my hands on it.
Yeah, man, happy to join you. I'm always excited to chat about DriveWorks and dive into the weeds. So, thanks for setting this up, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, for sure.